Number 10. Lyoto Machida was set to make his first title defense against Mauricio Shogun Rua at UFC 104. In the fight, both fighters were going back and forth in a very technical fight, where Mauricio Rua was using his Muay Thai, landing his vicious leg kicks as well as punishing Lyoto Machida's body. Lyoto Machida used his distance to land clean strikes as Shogun came in to engage. After a very close fight, the unanimous decision victory was given to Lyoto Machida. A lot of people thought that Mauricio Rua should have won the fight as he caused far more damage than Lyoto Machida did and landed more strikes, but wasn't able to impress the judges. Number 9. After George St-Pierre pulled out of his title fight against Nick Diaz due to injury at UFC 143, Carlos Condit stepped up to face Nick Diaz for the interim UFC welterweight title. In the fight, Carlos Condit used a lot of movement, attacking Nick Diaz from the outside. Nick Diaz was pushing the pace, landing clean combinations. After a super close fight, the unanimous decision victory was given to Carlos Condit. Many had thought that Nick Diaz had done enough to secure him the title, but the judges saw the fight in a different way. Number 8. BJ Penn was set to make his fourth title defense against Frankie Edgar at UFC 112. In the fight, BJ Penn used his boxing to land clean strikes as Frankie Edgar came in, whereas Frankie Edgar used his quick movement using his striking to set up his takedowns. After a very close fight, the unanimous decision victory was given to Frankie Edgar, who won the UFC lightweight title. A lot of people thought that BJ Penn should have retained his title as he landed the more significant strikes in the fight and should have remained the champion. Number 7. After successfully winning the UFC lightweight title from Frankie Edgar at UFC 144, Benson Henderson was set to make his first title defense against Frankie Edgar again in a rematch at UFC 150. In the fight, Frankie Edgar used his speed and movement to land volume strikes, even knocking Benson Henderson down in the later rounds. Benson Henderson stayed patiently on the outside, landing hard body kicks and was stuffing Frankie Edgar's takedown attempts. After a super close fight, the split decision victory was given to Benson Henderson. Many had thought that Frankie Edgar's aggressiveness and volume striking had done enough to win back his title, but the judges saw it a different way. Number 6. After successfully winning the UFC welterweight title against Robbie Lawler at UFC 171, Johny Hendricks was set to make his first title defense against Robbie Lawler again in a rematch at UFC 181. In the fight, Johny Hendricks was putting together his combinations very well and took Robbie Lawler down many times during the fight. Robbie Lawler came back aggressive in the later rounds, pushing the pace and threw a lot of power punches. After a very close fight, the split decision victory was given to Robbie Lawler, who won the UFC welterweight title. Many had thought that Johny Hendricks had done enough to secure the victory, but it didn't go his way. Number 5. TJ Dillashaw was set to make his third title defense against Dominick Cruz at UFC Fight Night 81. In the fight, Dominick Cruz used his footwork and movement to look for openings to strike, which set up his takedowns. TJ Dillashaw chased Dominick Cruz down, putting together combinations, landing hard kicks. In a very closely contested fight, the split decision victory was given to Dominick Cruz, who won the UFC bantamweight title. A lot of people thought that TJ Dillashaw landed the more effective strikes in the fight and should have retained his title. Number 4. Michael Bisping was set to make his first title defense against Dan Henderson at UFC 204. In their first fight, Dan Henderson brutally knocked out Michael Bisping at UFC 100. At UFC 204, Dan Henderson landed the H-bomb many times during the fight, but due to the toughness and the cardio of Michael Bisping, it allowed him to weather the storm to come back in the later rounds and was awarded the unanimous decision victory. Many had thought that Dan Henderson should have won the fight as he knocked Michael Bisping down many times during the fight and should have been the new champion. Number 3. Robbie Lawler was set to make his second title defense against Carlos Condit at UFC 195. In the fight, Carlos Condit started off very aggressive, putting together great combinations, stunning Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler came back aggressive in the later rounds, almost finishing Carlos Condit. After a crazy 5-round war, the split decision victory was given to Robbie Lawler. Many had thought that Carlos Condit had done enough in the earlier rounds to secure him a world title, but the judges saw it a different way. Number 2. Jon Jones was set to make his sixth title defense against Alexander Gustafsson at UFC 165. In the fight, Alexander Gustafsson displayed his great striking techniques and even took Jon Jones down many times during the fight. Jon Jones came back in the later rounds, landing his signature elbow strikes, stunning Alexander Gustafsson. After a crazy 5-round war, the unanimous decision victory was given to Jon Jones. Many had thought that Alexander Gustafsson was the aggressor in the fight and should have been the new champion. Number 1. George St-Pierre was set to make his 9th title defense against Johny Hendricks at UFC 167. In the fight, GSP used his stiff jab to keep Johny Hendricks at distance and landed strikes from the outside. Johny Hendricks seemed to be the more aggressive fighter, landing hard combinations throughout the 5 rounds. After a crazy back and forth fight, GSP was awarded the split decision victory. Many had thought that Johny Hendricks won the fight, including the UFC president Dana White. After the fight, GSP announced that he would be taking a break from the sport and vacated his title.
Bye.